Hey, come on!
Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is a pretty great game, but fuck. There's too many characters in this game. How am I supposed to pick a character to play as when there's over 80 choices to choose from? Well, what if we were to reduce Ultimate's current roster to only a mere 30 characters? Masahiro Sakurai has said several times that there will never be another Smash game again like Ultimate in terms of scale. So let's hypothetically trim the fat of our current roster to see who's the best of the best and to see who is worthy enough to stay in a potentially smaller Smash game. Now to lay down some ground rules. Number 1, this isn't going to be a prediction video on who I think will be in the next Smash game, mostly because we're very far removed from a new game and it's impossible to say what the gaming climate will be like when we reach that point. Number 2, my picks are mostly based on who I think is recognizable or iconic enough to be mainstays. I also tried to throw out most of my personal biases in deciding this roster, so if I didn't include one of your favorite characters, it isn't meant to be an attack. I only got 30 choices here, so some characters just had to be cut, like it or not. Cool? Cool. And number 3, we're not going to add any completely new characters to the roster, just because everyone who's anyone is already in Ultimate in some way, and adding new picks will just further complicate things, so I'm sorry if you guys wanted Alex Trebek to be playable. Alright, now that we've got all that out of the way, let's piss some people off. So to start out, we're keeping the original 12 characters from the first Smash game. Yes, even Jigglypuff. In my opinion, Smash just doesn't feel like Smash if these characters aren't here, and their recognizability has skyrocketed just from being in the series for so long. A lot of people really like cutting Jigglypuff from their rosters for not being as important in Pokemon anymore, but come on. Why keep only 11 of the 12 characters from the original roster if we're still going to keep characters like Captain Falcon or Ness? F-Zero has been dead for years and Earthbound is fairly niche all things considered. These series have passionate fan bases, but the point I'm trying to get across is that these two specifically come from games that don't mean much in modern gaming culture, so why should we cut only Jigglypuff if Captain Falcon or Ness are going to stay? Bottom line, we're keeping everyone from Smash 64. They deserve it. Alright, well we already almost have half of our slots filled out, so where do we go from here? Well, I think it's easier to look at who we should cut first rather than looking at who we should add. Since we're working with such a limited amount of characters, we're sadly going to have to remove all of our third-party characters. Third-party characters have become a major staple of Smash Bros., so much so that people get mad when Nintendo characters get announced as DLC nowadays. But at the end of the day, this is a Nintendo-based fighting game, and the smaller roster means they're just going to have to go. From here, I think we should look at how some series get represented through Smash, specifically the Mario, Zelda, Pokémon, and Fire Emblem series. Let's start out simple. I think the only Zelda characters we really need are Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf. Sheik has never been in a mainline game after Ocarina of Time, we really don't need 3 Links that play pretty similarly to each other, and in short, I think it's fitting that the 3 holders of the Triforce are the 3 Smash characters we get. Okay, let's move on to Mario. I think it's pretty fair to say that Peach and Bowser are gonna make it. I feel like I don't really have to explain much there, but surprisingly enough, the only other Mario character I'm going to pick is Wario. Now, why would I pick Wario over other Mario characters like Diddy Kong, Rosalina, or Bowser Jr.? Well, for one, Wario would represent his Wario Land of WarioWare series of games, and in my opinion, he's just more recognizable than Rosa or Bowser Jr. Well, what about Diddy Kong then? He's technically from the Donkey Kong Country games, and those could use some more representation, you might be asking. Yeah, I agree with that, but in truth, I mostly just cut him due to how few characters we have to work with, and with Donkey Kong just being enough for his series in my opinion. Oh yeah, K-Rool got cut too. Okay, and now we've finally reached that point. Let's talk about Fire Emblem and Pokemon. Now I like Fire Emblem and tolerate Pokemon, but man are these franchises overly represented. In my opinion, these two suffered the most from overrepresentation out of any series in Smash, and it's mostly just due to them constantly getting new characters from whatever the newest game is at the time. Let's knock out the easy ones. We're keeping Marth and saying goodbye to Roy, Corrin, Greninja, and Incineroar. These guys were pretty blatantly added to market their newest games in the series, and they really haven't made much of an impact since they got here, or in the case of Roy, aren't really beloved by their own fan base outside of Smash. Lucario, Chrom, and Lucina are getting cut too. These characters are more popular than the last couple of ones, but for Lucario, I think keeping Mewtwo instead would make for a much better and more popular choice. And with Lucina and Chrom, I mostly just wanted to cut out Echo Fighters or clone-like characters, so they pretty much have to go. That just leaves us with Ike, Robin, Byleth, and the Pokemon Trainer. And out of this bunch, I'm going to keep Ike and Byleth. I really wanted to keep Pokemon Trainer and Robin for being some of the more unique characters from their franchises, but for Pokemon Trainer, he just takes up too much space with him technically being considered as 3 characters. And in my opinion, Byleth beats Robin just because of recency bias and because he's still fairly unique. Now why is Ike staying, you might be wondering? Well, he is one of the more popular Fire Emblem characters, and he was able to make it to the transition from Brawl to Wii U, and I think his slower, tankier playstyle is a nice contrast to Marth's swiftness and more precise moveset. In my opinion, the only FE characters we ever really needed in Smash were Marth, Ike, and whoever was the newest character from the most recent game. I know the series is popular, but god, we really don't need 8 picks, especially when most of them are clones of each other, so let's just stick with the 3 I picked. Okay, after all that, we added 9 characters to our already 12 character roster, so that makes 21, only 9 more choices to go. Well, let's add some retro characters to the roster, and out of the many choices we have, I stuck with Mr. Game & Watch and Duck Hunt. I mostly stuck with these two because Game & Watch is a great historical representation of Nintendo's foray into video games, and Duck Hunt simply because his game was one of the best selling on the NES and because he's still pretty recognizable. It hurts that characters like Little Mac, Ice Climbers, and Rob can't make it, but we have to weigh our options here, and I just feel like the first 2 are better retro picks. Okay, now we have 23 characters, so how about we give some more representation to some of the franchises we already have here. Let's throw in King Dedede and Ridley because they're both antagonists of their series, are fairly recognizable, and in the case of the latter pick, was literally the most demanded character for Smash since its inception. So yeah, let's keep these guys. The only other series I was thinking of giving more representation to was with the Star Fox franchise. But apparently making a shitty Wii U game will kill your franchise or something, so we're just going to have to settle with Fox. Okay, only 5 more picks, and here's where we should throw in some characters from some of Nintendo's more recent titles. Let's start with Villager and Inkling. Their franchises are huge today, and I feel like they would add some nice variety here. I'm also going to add in Shulk, mostly because the Xenoblade fanbase would crucify me if I didn't, and because his game is still pretty popular. And to wrap up everything, let's add in Pit and Olimar. Pikmin, despite not being one of Nintendo's major sellers, still sells pretty well, and the series still gets new games with Pikmin 3 and possibly Pikmin 4. And I threw in Pit because Sakurai made Kid Icarus Uprising, and that game has a very dedicated fanbase. Despite it having a dedicated fanbase though, the entire series only has like 3 games, so I sadly decided to cut Palutena because of that. It's not the most climactic way to end things, but with that we have our 30 character roster. Is it perfect? No, not really. You could definitely make your case for Byleth and Ike being here, not the Ice Climbers or more Star Fox characters. And Meta Knight and Diddy Kong sadly got cut. But overall, I feel like I did a fairly good job at looking at who were the most recognizable, iconic, or unique characters in all of Smash to see what a smaller roster could look like for this series in a post-Ultimate world. Who knows what the next Smash game, whenever that may be, will be like. It could trim the fat by a little or a lot, but in the end, this was just a fun little thing to think about, and if you want to create your own 30 character roster, then I'd love to take a look at it. Just try to be respectful, because if you know me, I'm all about respect. I would never diss a character or the people who like them, and I'll show it by saying something nice about Corrin. Yeah, I can't do this.